PM Weekly starting right now, bringing emergency managers from around the world together to learn, share and collaborate.
Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are at. And hey, we're in December, so happy Hanukkah for those that are still celebrating. I think this is our last day, right? No, there's 2 more days left. Sorry about that, guys. I'm not a Hanukkah celebrator, but for those that are celebrating, a great 8 days of festive lights. And those that are getting ready for the other holidays, it's coming up fast. So get your holiday shopping done. But today we're talking about decision making, what it really means, and we have Lee DePaulo here, who serves as Disaster Tech Senior Vice President of Operations, and he was the former regional administrator for FEMA Region 8, and where he oversaw the coordination of FEMA's all-hazard preparedness and emergency management efforts within the regions and also the 29 tribal nations. So, Lee, welcome to EM Weekly.
It's great to be here, Todd. And I can't believe it's December already. I mean, this year is flying by.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember 2020 felt like it lasted forever, and then all of a sudden it's 2022. I mean, it's just kind of a weird, a weird thing. Yeah. So, what do you have going on over at Disaster Tech?
Disaster Tech, we have quite a few things going on. So, the core platform, when you talked in the opening about the decision making, is called Decision Science Integrated Collaboration Environment, DICE, as you'll hear me refer to it. So one of the reasons I joined Disaster Tech was because the DICE platform and the other work that the company is doing really helped solve a big problem that we faced in FEMA and we face across emergency management. And that's the ability to synchronize the local level, tribal level, state level, and federal level. So we're all working off the same information, the same situational awareness. We're able to communicate effectively back and forth and really build that same common operating picture, if you will, as to what's happening out there. So that's the service as a software piece for the company that for Disaster Tech. But I'm lucky because I get to work on a number of other things in the innovation space as well that go along with both the DICE platform and some of the things, the other projects that we're working at. And I'm happy to go into a few of those if you're interested.
Absolutely. Innovation and what we're doing with emergency management, I think is always critical. And I do have a couple of questions for you before we start going down that road, because decision making and innovation, I think, kind of go together. Do you agree with me, or am I off base?
I definitely agree with you. I mean, a lot of the way I look at decision making or innovation, is problem solving, right? And decision making inherently is about problem solving and making those right decisions so you can move forward. And in the case of emergency managers, save lives.
So why do you think at times that we start taking a look at the hindsight being 2020? I understand that, but we take a look at some of the decisions that are made in some of the most larger disasters that we had, say Katrina, for instance, Sandy, things like this, and we see where there's been missteps. Is that because of lack of forethought on it, lack of innovation, or is it just the decision making in the process without a lot of information? Like, what can we do with innovation to help with those decisions that are being made on those large scale disasters?
Yeah, I think, a lot of the challenges that we face in emergency management are extraordinarily difficult. And when you look back on the decisions in that regard, you realize that, making the decision was important to continue to move forward with where you were. But there are times you don't have the information and things that you need. I mean, COVID is the prime example. Right. We've talked about pandemics. There was an exercise in 2019 on a pandemic, a national level exercise. But everyone is so busy and moving on with real world stuff that you don't have time to sit back and truly absorb the lessons learned that you may get from an exercise like the 2019 exercise and help feed into the real world situation that we face with COVID. As an example, just using the pandemic. And it was an extraordinary challenge at first when you take a look at the fact that we didn't have the supplies. we needed up front. The ventilators, the PPE, they're made overseas, and trying to get that problem solved and understand the data that feeds that was a significant challenge to get moving. But proud of the fact that the work we did in the interagency, our work closely with the states and locals across the board, really was impactful once we got moving on that end. Now, are we going to look back and go, "Ooh, why did we make that decision?" Yes, we will, and we should.
Right.
But we need to capture those to ensure that we actually learn from them. And I think one of the challenges I've always had is the lesson learned process is great, but it's capturing those and then going back and really reviewing them. If you're going to run an exercise on, an earthquake exercise, go back and review the past after actions for that exercise, see what they learned, and then apply that as you're moving forward for the whole team. But that doesn't happen very often.
Right.
It didn't happen in the military either, quite frankly.
It's true. It's true. Craig Fugate said the other day when we had when we had him on the fireside chat, and when I was in New York, he said, when we don't learn from, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, basically he says, when we don't learn from our lessons, right? So if we're not learning from our lessons, they're not lessons learned, they're lessons observed. And I think that's critical. I think some of the stuff that you guys are doing over at Disaster Tech, specifically with DICE and also with Thor, is or Voltron, is the ability to capture those mistakes, if you will, and learn from them. And is that part of the innovation work that you're working on?
Yeah, absolutely. The Project Voltron with Microsoft is quite exciting. So it's serious gaming and simulation, working with folks that have worked on the Xbox side and all that. But we're taking that and we're applying it to the exercise environment, and be able to shape almost any scenario that you can imagine, and be able to get real-time feedback. The injects and things that will happen through that system are going to be much more robust than we can do now with measles lists and spreadsheets and white cells trying to do that, because it'll just be able to work into elements of artificial intelligence, feed that kind of stuff. You can even pause it and say, okay, this just happened. What did we learn from it? You don't have to, often exercises, because of time constraints and everything else, we do day one, full scenario. And there's a lot of benefit to doing day one, but what about day 12?
Yeah.
And take a segment of that and see where you're at. And when the airport's still closed and power still hasn't been restored, or whatever you want to do, and apply that. And you can bounce around. Everyone can be part of it. So, if it can host, folks, a number of different folks across the board. So you have the local, states, tribe, everyone working together in this simulation environment, and you're able to design it like you want. So really exciting stuff. Their CEO, Sean Griffin, Disaster Tech CEO, is going to be on your show on the 16th, I believe, at noon.
Yes.
Yeah, along with Wesley Williams from Microsoft. So I encourage folks to tune into that, and you'll get even a more in-depth explanation of what we're calling Project Voltron. And we did unveil it, had an overview at IAEM conference up in Grand Rapids. So that was nice to see a full room and really introduce that. So I'm excited about where that's going to go. And, pun intended, a game changer for our community.
It is a game changer. And Dan, who's normally here with us today, he's actually not able to make it. We sat there and we watched it and we looked at each other and we said, man, this is going to make a difference in how we do training exercises, especially when you can get into, like you said, day 12, day 16, into the recovery aspect of it, because we don't really go there with exercises, and then we also get like a lot of artificialities in there, when somebody goes, oh yeah, we're going to order up 100,000 firefighters to fight this fire and they're going to be here tomorrow. It's like, come on, right? Let's put, let's not go to, and I would be hyperbole on that, by the way, everybody. No one really says 100,000 firefighters. Don't get all upset. It's probably more like, a couple hundred, but the idea is ordering stuff and getting things in. We tend to sugarcoat the idea of how quick things get here. And it really, I think it hurts us when we go back into, in the real world, when we do say, hey, we're going to order up some stuff and it's taking forever to get there. And it's like, that's not how it happened in the exercise,
It's funny you mentioned that the number of people when we were redoing our Wasatch planning when I was in Region 8, as we do every 5 years at least, but really doing an in-depth relook at how we even do planning. And just the first day, as we were kind of looking at how we're going to phase in resources, we asked all our partners and what they need and all the different components of the FEMA side. What do you need to put in? And the list was like 10,000 people into the Salt Lake City area. That's where the Wasatch Front is. A lot of people don't know the earthquake threat that exists there, which is quite significant, particularly because of the number of unreinforced masonry structures that exist across that area. So 10,000 people, no, that's not going to happen. And of course, you take that's the wish list, right? And you tailor that down from there to see what you can really put in, who needs to be there, and how do you support them? Because when you're not going to put people forward and stick them in a hotel in the most challenging areas across there. You focus on life-saving, life-sustaining operations and moving forward. So it was an interesting point when you talk about throwing people at a problem.
Right.
Yeah.
What's exciting you right now?
I think a couple things that I'm excited about besides Voltron. Voltron, I have to say is at the top of the list. But one of the things that I've had the opportunity to do and carry on from my time at FEMA, where we did a lot of academic partnership type of things, is not continue a partnership, but start a new one with Indiana University and their Crisis Technologies Innovation Lab. They have a lot of capability that can be focused on the response side and the mitigation side. They're data scientists, and really think that they will enhance the community and that thought leadership piece that's out there and those sorts of things. Specifically, a couple projects I'm working on with them. One has to do with telemedicine, and while it's a large project, U.S. Army is sponsoring that through the Telemedicine Advanced Technology Research Center, or TATRIC, as it's known. But they're specifically looking at a learning accelerator, disaster learning environment accelerator piece that has a lot of application. And ultimately, the primary purpose is for the battlefield. It really has a lot of implications for the disaster community as well. Patient care, remotely, getting expertise to rural areas and things like that might not be on hand immediately. So excited where that project's going for sure. Another side project with them that we're looking at, we put in for a small business technology transfer together. Partnership. That's another one of those tools out there that the Fed government can use to really help solve problems. And this one came out of Office of Secretary of Defense, looking at population migration. And so we propose building a population migration analysis platform because there's going to be so many. People are across the globe are moving to the coast. There's climate implications for where folks are going, and it's tried to predict the impacts of population migration and what they're going to look like. And so that's one of those projects that will expand beyond that into other areas. So excited to work as part of that. And then a third thing, a little bit a different project, is with an organization, nonprofit called the Advanced Mobility Collective. And they have stood up a forest tech center in Colorado. And what this is going to do is serve as a technology aggregator for wildfires. The executive director of Advanced Mobility Collective he was in Colorado in Grand County when we had a big fire there in 2020. Matter of fact, that fire resulted in a major disaster declaration, which doesn't happen a lot in the Region 8 area. There's a lot of fire management assistance grants, but not a lot of disaster declarations. So I'm going to put the expertise between academia and the private sector together, and working with the state of Colorado's Center of Excellence out there, and see what we can do to not just on the response side of wildfires, but on the mitigation side, the preparedness side, and the whole gamut.
I mean, I know we're not here to talk about Colorado Center of Excellence, but that if you guys have not checked that organization out, that is a group that you need to get familiar with because they are doing some fantastic work, specifically in the aviation and fire areas. It's a great organization. I have a question that came in. It says, it's from Michael. It says, for your exercises that begin on day XX of sustained or recovery transition, do you send out a short lead up notes, or how do you give a lead into the scenario to start the scenario? That's a good question. What is the scenario basis that you can see with the Voltron product, and then how does that work with giving that lead up information to the participants?
Yeah, I think that is a fantastic question, and it's one that we'll be able to model that, right? Based and determine. I think it'll get a little bit more challenging as we get into the transition period, into recovery and that sort of thing. But being able to model and scenario based stuff, and determining what it's going to look like on day XX. Is something that we'll definitely be able to do and will do. I mean, take a better example, and I did is FEMA just released their climate exercise guidance, incorporating climate change, climate adaptation into exercises. That'd be perfect for Voltron. Based on modeling that we see out there, impacts the right people in the community. So it's not just the responders exercising. You're bringing in the mitigation side. You're bringing in federal agencies that don't normally get involved in that response piece with FEMA. So it's endless opportunity as long as you're feeding it data that's accurate and in preparation. How do you have to prep people for that, right? You can't just say, okay, we're gonna do day 20. In Salt Lake City for Wasatch, you have to have a set of things that have already occurred, and so they understand where they're starting from, where the starting point is for that particular exercise.
You brought up the idea, or the issue of disaster migrants, if you will, or disaster refugees, as some people call it. We've seen this issue just right at the border, just recently, with everybody coming over from Haiti to come into Texas from their earthquake just recently. We're hearing stories of people moving in throughout Europe or throughout Asia into Europe due to water crisis and stuff like this. Is this something that we're really going to have to start planning for as emergency managers, of having these disaster refugees coming through to certain areas? I mean, what do you think of that? I mean, you brought it up. This kind of what's
I think if the Department of Defense is certainly concerned about it, because that's where this small business technology transfer project came from, and oftentimes what they're concerned about is will have spillover effects into what we're concerned about as emergency managers. And your example of Haiti is an excellent one, because the earthquake happened there and the migration started to the southern border area. So how can modeling help predict that? How can modeling based on climate change help predict where people are ultimately going to go, and where they're going to go? Are there going to be shortfalls in food, water, and everything else? So that's why I think that project is important. The focus is on DoD, but I think there will be the modeling that we do and the platform that we build will have applications certainly for the emergency management community.
And by the way, that concern isn't just from international people coming over from climate crisis or from other crises as well. I mean, we saw this with Katrina, where, I mean, it was Louisiana, so something like 50% or more of the population of Louisiana moved, and they're still down 20% from the height before Katrina. So, I mean, we've seen this migration of people leaving those disaster-prone areas after an event, and as the climate crisis keeps going, we're seeing, again, areas that normally didn't have major floods, at least on a regular basis, are starting to flood more. And I think we're going to start seeing more and more migration away from the coastal areas. Well, I mean, not necessarily the coastal areas, but from direct coastal impact into other areas, such as, say, and I'll use this as an example, and there's no data to back this up. This is just an idea, is moving, say, from like Los Angeles coast out to, say, Riverside or something like that. What does the impact have on the Inland Empire compared to with water and housing and whatnot? Is that concern? Is that something that, as emergency managers, we should be concerned about?
It's an excellent point, and I think we do need to be concerned about it. I was lucky enough when I was in FEMA Region 8 to get introduced and talk with Dr. Kate Brown out of Colorado State University, and she's a disaster anthropologist, which I didn't know we had disaster anthropologists, but she studied the impacts of one particular large family and from Katrina and their move to Texas, and the implications, the social implications that it had on the family and that sort. So that ultimately gets back to my point at the beginning of emergency managers partnering with academia. There's people out there, great smart minds that are studying this, and that feeds into this innovation. They can help us solve problems. So if we're concerned, if that you feel like a major event, either on the receiving end of a lot of people, should there be a hurricane, somewhere in the Gulf Coast, and where people are going to go, or losing population or what have you, or the previous point that we were talking about on population migration, internationally. I think that the underlying point for everyone from emergency management is find those partners that are out there and find ways to go about engaging with them. They're hugely valuable, and I can give you one example of something that we did in Region 8 if you're interested on that end.
Absolutely.
So DOD is a good model for a lot of the innovation stuff because they've been doing it for a number of years, and more rapid acquisition and things like that. They had a program called Hacking for Defense, and don't get caught up on the hacking word. That's just problem solving. I said that to a couple of people, and they're like, that's Apollo talking about, hacking. And so we piloted the first Hacking for Homeland Security program with the Colorado School of Mines, which is a really amazing engineering school right there in Golden, Colorado, and very close to Region 8. And so what that looked like is you teach students entrepreneurial skills and problem solving. They identify what problems they want to solve. They have a sponsor, and then they go through and ultimately make these pretty amazing presentations after just a semester worth of work. Of the problems that we had 7 total. One of those was a state of Colorado problem, so we didn't have to limit it to FEMA. One was the state of Montana issue, and one was our partners at CISA, Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. And the students did a phenomenal job on everything from, trying to come up with a solution for a local power outage and all the way up to wildfire related stuff. And in the case of the state of Colorado, it was training related. There was a gamification version and that sort of stuff on the preparedness side. So there are programs like that, and that was a pilot program that is now continuing slowly at this point in DHS that you can leverage. But you don't have to have a formal program like that either. We ran a hackathon during COVID with Colorado School of Mines, a weekend event. They offer pizza and some other stuff, small prizes, and students just get involved in things. And we were looking for solutions that we might implement there in Region 8 on the COVID. In fact, that's how I met Sean Griffin, our CEO. He was one of the mentors on there. And I remember hearing him talk about planning and all that. I'm like, that guy's, he's pretty smart.
He's pretty smart. Right?
So I link in with him, the standard stuff. And I never in my wildest dreams would I have imagined then that he'd be my boss, but he is. So
right.
Kind of cool how the world is small.
And he's Navy, by the way, just say.
Yeah, I know. We discuss such things. He was yeah, I won't get into tell a story about him, but I'll leave it for his podcast.
Absolutely. Tomorrow on the 16th, right?
Yeah.
Oh man. This stuff is great. And one of the things that I think is interesting, we're using words, right? And so you say hack, and people go, hack, not understanding what the term really means. And then on the other side of it too is gamification. And when we talk about gamification, why is that important there's two aspects of it, but I'm going to ask it to you. Why is it important on the learning methods of why do people learn better with gamification? And two, why does it make things feel more real when we do the gamification aspect of training?
I think on the learning side, that one of the key benefits is the real-time feedback and in-depth feedback that you can get from the gamification process. Hugely important because as well as I, Todd, we put a lot of work into running these exercises. We get through there and we get through them at the end of the day. We allot a half hour for the AAR and everyone's tired. And, we do a quick, oh yeah, it was good. Yeah. Good job, Apollo. And then we go away and we might write up a report that, as I stated earlier, we don't necessarily look at. So here, the other thing is you can just take select pieces of it with select people and really deep dive into pieces of the exercise. If you just wanted to focus on ES15 and numbers of injects and real-time tweets and other things, real-time being simulated, coming in and having them do their business, you can do that. So everything from full-scale national level type capability to the smaller versions of it, I think are really beneficial, and there's a learning element to all of that. And then you take that, and if you take the analytics that go with this, you can then apply it and change plans, policy, procedures, all that kind of stuff that I think will really are going to benefit our entire community.
Why do you think the private sector is resistant to doing exercises the way we do in the government side of things?
I think it's part of it. It's time, and they're trying to earn money and profit, and they, the ability to take the time away from what they're doing to come into one of our environments and exercise is challenging for them. It's challenging internally too, especially when you see what's certainly COVID, but even before COVID, when you want to get states involved in these national level exercises, and they have some other stuff going on. They were hit with the flood, they were hit with this, they were hit with that, and you get to a point where it's difficult to pull away and do a simulated scenario when you're dealing with real world stuff. I mean, a great example is we were supposed to have the off-year national exercise in 2021 for Wasatch. One of my primary jobs not my primary job, but one of the things I really prioritized as a regional administrator in Region 8 was, hey, there's this big threat out here at the Wasatch Front, as I stated earlier. And so we were happy to be able to get that level of exercise, but we couldn't do it. And, we worked with the state and we wanted to, but it just got to a point where we had to pull away from that. And certainly, we weren't going to, on a good day, get private sector involvement, which we were working on. But in the end, it was going to be a challenge.
Do you think product like Voltron will help with that, bridging that gap between with the private sector?
I really do. A lot of the things we do with exercises were in person, right? So can you get the local utility to come over and those sorts? And we did do some of that where we would use our risk to our regional interagency steering committee to bring folks in from local community to do at least a tabletop dialogue. So we did some of that in Region 8. So there is value in ways to do it that way. But again, at the time we were in person. But now with Voltron, you exercise from anywhere. You have people in different areas from across the globe working on the exercise. So I think that'll be well received. Again, a couple of times I've discussed this. It doesn't have to be an all-day event. You can exercise more frequently, but in shorter durations to be able to engage people more. Otherwise, setting aside a day, certainly multi-days, is a challenge that everyone faces.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. And with the idea of leaning down staff and putting more pressure on to the staff that you have does create some of that. Excuse me. Eileen says, I know professors who use simulations to study supply chain issues, and something that happened in the simulations actually occur, and made the realization of simulations can bring out exercise issues that people are not aware of. Wow, that was a long one. Yeah. Simulation does do that, right? And with the AI, and just last question here, because I know we're getting on the hard stop here. With the AI and the ML that you guys are using, when you pull in like issues like say supply chain issues that are happening, right now, with the shipping issues that we're having off the coast here, does that can you build exercises upon things that happen in real time?
It will take a little time to build it, but certainly we can adapt to situations like that, and the whole Voltron, the gamification could be used in real time as well. So that's a consideration that actually was brought up at IAEM.
Right.
Mumbling over that one, aren't I? Sorry.
Sometimes it's hard to say,
Yeah.
especially early in the morning.
Yeah.
How can people find you?
LinkedIn is a great way to find me. I encourage you to do LinkedIn. Other Lee at disastertech.com is pretty easy to remember. I like to engage. I like to collaborate. Excited for any of your listeners to reach out if you have further questions. I want to know a little bit more on the Project Voltron or DICE. We're actually doing a demo this Friday at 1200 Eastern on the DICE platform. You can find that. Do a quick search on LinkedIn for Disaster Tech, and you'll see the post out there for registration. So that's another thing. If you're interested in what DICE looks like and how it can help you, please do reach out, as we're going to do a number of these demos over the next few months.
And all that information is also in the show notes, so you can go ahead and click on there. So if you're driving down the road, like I like to say, if your pencil's not sharp, don't worry about it. You can get in there and just push that button down there. Oh, and somebody just put your email in the chat. So if you're on LinkedIn in the chat, you can grab Lee's email and send them Christmas gifts or something like that as well.
Yeah.
So, well, we're at the end here, and just hey everybody, I want to remind you that we are having some additional stuff coming on here. We have the webinar alert. It's going to be enhancing the hybrid training model, virtual EOC gamification with Sean Griffin and Wesley Williams on December 16th at 10 p.m. or 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So please sign up for that. And if you'd like more information on that, you can also check that out. Lee, bring Lee back on here for a second. One thing, I forgot to tell you at the beginning of this. Lee was an Air Force pilot as well, and flew the helicopters and whatnot. And Lee, thank you so much for your service and what you did for those of us out there. And not only did he do that, he also flew rescue missions with Dust Off and bringing our men and women that were injured to safety. I do appreciate everything that you did over there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Todd. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Hey everybody, thank you so much for spending time with us today here at EN Weekly. It's great to spend mornings with you. But don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast player. And hey, engage with us also on Facebook. We have the Facebook group. We'd love to have you join over there. We do some fun stuff on the side over there, and other interactions that are going on. A lot of great conversations on the EN Weekly Facebook group. So thank you so much for that. And everybody, stay safe and stay hydrated. See you next week.